How to close big, fat, juicy wholesale deals with detail-oriented sellers. That's the topic of today's show. First of all, I want to welcome you to the No Limits Real Estate Investing Podcast. And if you are looking to do big, fat, juicy wholesale deals, this is your place. So make sure to head on over to nolimitsrealestatinvesting.com/script. And there you can get a copy of the very same script that we use in our wholesale business, the one that we've used to lock up over 1,300 deals in various states, and the ones that I've trained the country's best investors to close deals. You can get a free copy, nolimitsrealestatinvesting.com/script. So we're going to try something a little bit different today, and that is we're going to play some good news from some of our listeners. So let's go ahead and roll the tape and hear our first piece of good news.
This is Greg Majerus out of Wichita, Kansas. And, Todd, the good news is, great news, whatever you want to call it. I guess good news is this one. I did land my first wholesale deal last week, and that was my very first real estate deal, in my career. I've been, I was struggling for like 9 months before I got that. I was really trying for about 9 months. And that's why I purchased your course, because I could see that I could learn things there where I would be able to go into a deal knowing how to come out of it right,
So, Greg, thanks for that. Obviously, we're not going to play the whole thing, but want to thank you for sending that in. And by the way, whether you're trying to do your first deal, you may be like, Todd, I'm more advanced than that, right? I want to do big, fat, juicy deals. The purpose of this podcast is that you do things right from the beginning. So whether you've done this from the beginning, or maybe you're in a rut where you're doing $10, $15, $20,000 deals and you want to bump this up to 40, 50, 60, 100K deals, which actually we just closed 2 of those this week in our company. This is your place. So let's go ahead and jump into today's question on how to close a detail-oriented seller. Let's go ahead and play it.
Hi, Todd. This is Pam Sharma, and I'm doing a training system, and I have a question in regards to, the detail-oriented, the C we call. They pretty much want to know all the details, what do you call it, the data justification using data and analytics to back it up. So, if you do price reduction, during your initial call with the seller, now I'm thinking that would be a problem, right? Doing the property inspection to back it up, because I have to be ready with all my details as far as the data is concerned. So now, how do you go about doing that when you are talking like the initial call with the seller and doing a price reduction?
So great question, Pam. And so for our listeners, if you're listening to this and you're wondering what Pam is talking about a personality trait that we talk about in the DISC. And I talk a lot about this in the No Limit Selling System, where it's DISC. And the C seller is someone who makes decisions based on data. So if you've ever tried to negotiate something with somebody, or let's say you're talking about plans, and someone wants all the details, right? Like, it just drives you nuts. They're like, okay, like, how long does it take to get there? And how much is it? And, what is, how fast are we going to go? Right? They want all the details, like bang, 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 to formulate a decision. It may drive you nuts if you're that, kind of natural person who likes to do things very, very fast, right? So sometimes when we do things in the wholesale business, we're trying to buy a house at a discount from somebody who's very data focused, right? They want to know, okay, you're going to buy my house for this much. How much is the commission? How much is the closing cost? How much are the repairs going to cost you, right? And so then they want to basically back out all of the cost, all the numbers, and then for you to formulate an offer based on this number. And I can tell you that it is, if you don't know what you're doing, and you will after this episode, it could be very difficult to do business with these types of people, because a lot of us, right, we just want to go on emotion and we want to do things our way. And so when you're doing things like this, it's really important that you get this right. So I've got some notes here on how to actually do a wholesale deal with a detail-oriented seller, okay? And this is really, really important. And by the way, we've done giant deals with these people. You just have to know how to play in their arena. So number one is never make a statement that you cannot back up later. Okay, so many wholesalers, which is a giant mistake, the words come out of their mouth saying, we have to fix up, or this is going to cost us, or the roof is going to cost $22,000 because we are going to replace it. Okay, big, big, big mistake, because as you are talking, they are taking mental notes or written notes, right, on everything that's coming out of your mouth. And if you have to back that out later, okay, they're going to call you out on that. Second is that once you start doing that, right, let's say you overinflate something, which I don't recommend, okay, is if your profit is larger, okay, than they think it should be, you are also going to have to justify that. So what I'm going to recommend here is you watch your words very carefully when you're talking to a detail-oriented seller. So the things that I like to use, the words are, Mr. Seller, we have to be able to make a profit, okay, on this property, we have to buy at this price, right? Obviously, considering the condition of the property and the market conditions, this is where we have to be. Okay, now, can you talk about the things the house needs? Absolutely. Okay, but do not claim that you are going to be fixing it, okay? Because then the seller is going to want bids and it's going to take you down a rabbit hole, okay, that you don't want to be in. All right, so my next step is make it about the numbers, but not about the numbers. Well, what the heck does that mean? What it means is sellers, okay, they sell on emotion, right? They sell on a point where they are, at least to us, right? They get to a point where they are tired and fed up and they just want this pain to go away. Simple as that, even if they are detail-oriented. So there may be a leading up point to this, but at some point they decide that the data that they have in front of them is enough to make the decision. So one of the things that I'll do is I'll have the seller, I'll turn it back on them and I'll say, Mr. Seller, let me ask you a question. You may be better off, right, just selling with an agent, right? And if you do, I would suggest that you calculate those numbers. So I'll have them do that. Okay, how much for closing costs? How much to deal with the real estate agent? How much money are you going to have to put in to fix this up, right? What is the title insurance going to cost you? What is the market time? Okay, so what is the time and freedom worth to you? Right? And then I'll have them put a number on that. Okay, so what is that time and freedom and energy? What is that worth to you? And I ask them that. One thing I'll say is, Mr. Seller, listen, I understand that you have all these numbers in front of you, and I think it's really, really important. And they're going to have that on there, that sheet. They're going to know what it basically is going to cost to sell that property the traditional way and how much equity they're going to leave on the table by dealing with you. And do not be scared of that, right? Hit sellers right between the eyes with honesty, and they will trust you. If you try to go the other way with someone who's detail-oriented, where you try to fluff the numbers, you're dead in the water. So you have to be especially transparent with these people. So then I'll say, Mr. Seller, let me ask you a question. Now that you have all these numbers, I know that you could get more money with somebody else if you go the traditional route. But when you do business with me, you're going to trade a little bit of your equity for a lot of speed and convenience, all right? You get a lot of speed and convenience, peace of mind, right? And you're going to give up some of your equity. And you've got to ask yourself, Mr. Seller, are you okay with that? And then shut up and listen to what they say. Now, they may still need to go through that data. That's really, really, really important, okay? But sometimes they will also have to justify their decision. So let's talk about, I know the original question was out of price reduction. And I'm not sure whether you're trying to negotiate an upfront price reduction or a price reduction on the back end after you have negotiated. But let's just say, I'm going to answer this question. If you need a price reduction later where you've already negotiated a deal with a detail-oriented person, and you need a price reduction later, I would get a professional home inspection done. I would invest, that's the word, invest $250 into a property inspection and give that to the seller and let them look at it and stew on it. Now, for them, they might say, well, how much is it going to cost you to quote all this? I'm going to say, Mr. Seller, I'm going to have you do your own quotes. This is for your benefit. And you can put a price next to each one of these. But for me, this is where I have to be able to make a profit. And I'd like you to add all this up, put it on a spreadsheet, and do that and determine whether we are a fit or not. Now, the seller's going to maybe want to see a net sheet. What's a net sheet? What they are actually going to net. So you can call your title company and say, can we have a net sheet for this property? And they actually will prepare that, and you can give that to a detail-oriented seller, and they can think about that. Again, I wouldn't do this until I had the property in a contract, but if you're looking at getting a price reduction from these people, it is very, very, very important. Now, here's another way, and this is really important, is that not all data is created equal, right? But get outside the box. So let's say you have a property under contract, it's not selling, and you gave the seller the inspection report. One piece of data, right, detail that you can give the seller is like, look, one of the things that we do before we buy a property is sometimes we look at all the data and the deal looks good, right? The deal looks good. This is the numbers. I feel great. You feel great on this deal. I thought that you and I were right on, right? You validate the seller, you validate the data, you validate the work they've put in. But the most important thing here is what the market says. And I put this out to market it even before we closed just to gauge interest. And I can tell you that the market was dead. So what does this tell me? That tells me that the market does not believe this property is worth this. And because of that, I need to be lower. Now, especially right now, I'm recording this in late June of 2022. There's a little bit of a market shift going on, right? I don't know if it's going to be long-term. I don't know if it's short-term. I'm not going to predict the market, at least on this episode. But what I can tell you is that offers are starting to slow up a little bit from our cash buyers. So one of the things I'll bring up to a seller is say, listen, the sellers just aren't biting, right? And I can tell you, I know that you are looking at this comp and this comp and this comp. By the way, if you don't know what a comp is just a list of other houses that are very similar that have sold within the last 6 months in the same area of the property that you're looking at, right? Comparable sales. And so you use those to help determine your offer price. So at this point, I'll say at the end of the day, this is what's going on. I also may send them some news articles, right? Backing up that information. Now, it's really important. You can give the seller all of this. You can give them the inspection report. You can give them the news articles. You could share the data about the buyers not coming in. But at the end of the day, they are going to have to sit on this and marinate. And so my recommendation here is then to use a technique that I talk a lot about in the no limit selling system and say, listen, I know that you have to look at your data. You have to make decisions here. Can we set a time where you can review all this and then you and I will speak again next? Great. Okay. So what has to happen between now and then for you to be able to make a decision? Okay, and now we understand. Okay, and then what is the tipping point, Mr. Seller, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, of which you say, you know what, I'm leaving too much money on the table versus, you know what, I'm going to give up that money. What is that mark in your mind of the tipping point of doing business with someone like me versus going the traditional route? What is that number? And then I have them state that number so they know with absolute certainty, okay, how they are going to make that decision. So you see how I don't push them towards doing business with me, right? But I push them to their correct decision, even if it's not with me. By the way, I do talk a lot about this, full training in the nolimitsalessystem.com. And this is the exact system that we use to train our sales reps in our company and the best investors across the country. So go ahead and check out nolimitsalessystem.com. I got some free videos for you there. If you just want to purchase the system, you can go to nolimitsalessystem.com/backdoor. So let me go ahead and summarize. Number one is don't make a statement that you can't back up later. Number two, make it about the numbers, okay, but not about the numbers, okay? It doesn't have to be all about the numbers on the house. It could be about the numbers that you're trading for speed and convenience. Remember, you have to make a profit, and that is okay to communicate that to the seller, okay? Turn the data around on the seller. Have them talk about marketing time, commission, closing costs, title insurance, holding time, stress, right? Have them recognize that leaving money on the table is okay, right? Only they can do that, but ask the right questions. Ask them if they're willing to trade some of their equity for speed and convenience. If you're using a price reduction, make sure that you use an inspection report. Invest that money. Don't worry about spending it. It's not an expense. Also, it's okay to talk about market response, right? Tell them that you marketed the property. It's a great way to get data. And if you have to get a price reduction, tell them the market's dead. It doesn't matter what the comparables say, right? The market may be changing, and this is what the market is telling you. Pam, thank you so much for sending in that question. By the way, if you do have a question and you want me to answer it on the air like this on the show, send an email to support@nolimitsrealestateinvesting.com. Support@nolimitsrealestateinvesting.com. You can also send that in by email, and I'll read that off the show. Remember to head on over to nolimitsrealestateinvesting.com/script if you want that free script, and I will talk to you on the next episode.